Hello, everyone. My name is Dennis King, and I'm the CEO here at Solace. Today, I'm having another fireside chat, and today I have with me Alessandro Petroni, who is the Global Head of Strategy for Financial Services at RedHat. Super excited to have you here, Alessandro. We go back way back in financial services. How are you doing?
Thank you, Denis, for inviting me. A pleasure being with you. Been doing good. You know, everybody is remote as we are here in New York, but it's been so far so good.
So we're here at the EDA Summit. We have a fairly large audience that are here talking about event-driven architecture, what it means to financial services, what it means to the RedHat community. And before we jump into that, I just wanted to talk a little bit about yourself and get some background on you. So why don't you tell us about yourself, a little bit about how you got to your current role at RedHat, and a bit about your journey.
Sure. I joined RedHat roughly 5 years ago. I come from history in the financial service industry, roughly 16 years working at banks and also at vendors. Lately at RedHat, I've been asked to lead our strategy in the vertical of financial services as we move more from an horizontal operating system dialogue into working more in the industry. We needed to develop the stories and the use case in the financial service industry. And I've been having a great opportunity to work with a large team to define what the market needs and define also what the RedHat solution and open source in general can provide to this market.
Awesome. So just to get a little more information on you, Alessandro, I'll just give you a little bit of a lightning round set of questions, just some more background. So why don't you tell us, 3-4 seconds each, what's your favorite book?
The book that I've been reading recently is not very maybe latest and greatest. I've been following actually, because we are home, I followed Harvard Business School, went back to school. So I've been reading again, The Innovator's Dilemma for Christensen, right? Used to be my professor and great guy, unfortunately passed, but he left so much legacy. I really wanted to go deep dive into that.
I've read that book 3 times, one of my favorite books. Awesome book. What about your favorite movie?
How many movies have we been all seen during COVID? Tons. Something that's sticking in my mind was, the Money Heist, the Spanish movie, the mini series. It was phenomenal. Really loved the psychology of the good and the bad and the switch of the role. I really love that. The actors are amazing.
Cool. What about your favorite band?
Again, music fan, studied music when I was a little guy. And so Chick Corea, fortunately passed, right? So Chick Corea Electric Band probably is one I've been streaming the most recently because I want to learn how to play piano better, even though it's impossible to reach that quality of Chick Corea. But, that's the band that I'm listening recently.
Cool. Lots of new things during COVID, eh? So what about your favorite food?
Oh my God, I'm Italian, as you know, so I could say it's Chinese, but I stick to my mother-in-law food. That's what it is, right? The best.
And your favorite sport, either to play or to watch?
I don't know if you recall, I've been coaching soccer to the kids for 13 years, so definitely soccer is my sport. It's coming popular also in the US, finally. I'm very happy about this. And also as Italian, of course, I need to be a soccer fan, right?
Awesome. So then, diving in a bit more, Alessandro, why don't you talk a little bit about, your role at RedHat, but specifically, what are you trying to accomplish, with financial services? And maybe if you can talk a bit about how COVID has impacted the year as well. But, just diving into the role specifically and some of the big topics on your mind with FSI.
So RedHat is leading the journey to the MultiCloud. Our major work has been done in the years, as we all probably know, with the Linux, the operating system for every hardware platform. So for the past years, we've been doing the corresponding platforming for the clouds, not only one, but many, adopting the Kubernetes framework as open source upstream, and making sure that the customer are able to build and deploy on any type of infrastructure, whatever it's public, private, or virtualized.
And how, I mean, you brought up cloud. So how, you know, in terms of financial services, we certainly see quite a spectrum of adoption and maturity in cloud. And capital markets in particular, part of FSI, you know, is infamous for regulation and security, and in some cases laggards to cloud. So how are you guys seeing the adoption and maturity as you approach the whole hybrid multi-cloud environment?
I would say that 2-3 years ago, every institution, whatever is capital market and also retail and wealth management, has been adopting cloud and exploring, having different camps and laboratories with different cloud providers, also try to create the cloud themselves internally in the bank to streamline all the processes. But definitely with COVID, as we go into always on, always digital, branches are closed, they need to be pervasively available on any jurisdiction. The cloud adoption has been incredibly rapidly evolving, a much bigger speed than before. And moreover, what is interesting, whereas in the first years, the banks, the institution will work only with 1 or 2 solution or cloud provider, for example, today is a given because of mandatory requirement that they need to be available on all of them. So the multi-cloud becomes even more interesting now, just because, of course, it's a risk aspect, right? Not to be stuck if that cloud provider doesn't work, because the bank has requirements to be always on for the customers.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing a lot of the same. I think multi-cloud can mean different things. It even means in some cases when people are trying to deploy in places like China and different parts of the world, where even a single cloud provider might look different in those other regions. So to them, it still feels like multi-cloud. So you see those distributions and some of those challenges. So we're here to talk about event-driven architecture, Alessandro, specifically, and you've been working in the banking sector for years and years. I remember talking to you back in the Merrill Lynch days, and event streams and pushing an asynchronous data flows in banks is definitely nothing new. And the fact that we're talking about event-driven architecture even here seems kind of ironic, seeing how long it's been in the industry, but it is sort of getting it's being revitalized at some level in more on retail, insurance, and even in other industries. But if we keep on the financial services theme, I mean, how do you see event-driven architecture evolving in the banks, and how is the RedHat community participating and playing and evolving in that same world as well? How do you see this sort of evolving going forward?
You're right. I call it back to the future, because we've been doing this 15 years ago, yes. Especially in the trading floors, where we needed to scale massively, and also taking care of the latencies, and the performance. But now it's interesting that EDA, having the ability to scale, to be resilient, comes on top of a set of fabric of eventing, and also of components that react. Now, going to cloud means also going to containerization, another form of packaging capabilities, and also different players that come in with their own business capability to plug into. Now, how we connect all this business capability or technology capabilities? Well, there are many ways, as we have done in the past, databases, messaging system, but streaming and eventing really fits incredibly well this new work of re-engineering, I would say, banking. And no longer just capital market, but we've seen also happening in retail banking and also in wealth management. Something that was relegated maybe for high performance initially in the trading floor now is more pervasive. Yet the adoption is not incredibly quick, because as in capital market, we did a lot of work into defining the events and the various activities. In the corresponding retail banking, we still don't have a catalog of things that needs to be, and back to you probably, right? Because you want to be talking more about what is an event, right? And it's not over yet. There's a lot of work to be done at the community. Community is important because the participation of the different players create this lingua franca, or at least the representation of the business events, which could be, a SAR, right? Suspicious activity reporting being raised. What that report for illegal activity going to be trickled down inside the organization, and now beyond the organization, because now fintech are attached on the ecosystem. So I mentioned a lot of stuff here, so I'll pause here, but it's very, very interesting how it's evolving this new world of ecosystem.
Yeah, no, you bring up a couple of really good points, Alessandro, and I like to relate it back to the old days because you remember at, in the banking and specifically in capital markets, the number of people required to build out an event-driven streaming backbone. When you have asynchronous data moving around to lots of different applications, it requires some form of a governance or cataloging or some way to know who's supposed to get what. And I think as EDA gets redefined into this new modern world and gets more mainstream, it has become more about community, how to make it simple, how do you define events, how do you catalog things. And so I do think the industry is moving in a direction of simplicity, almost like a no-code, low-code to EDA. But you would know all too well the challenges of days gone by and what's really required to make it mainstream. So, the talk about community is super, super important. Now, how do you see things like APIs and integration? And I know RedHat has a fairly robust ecosystem in all of those areas. But how do you see integration and APIs participating in this EDA world or event streaming world as well?
I'm glad you brought in APIs because I think what is finally happening, and we have been discussing, right, even among ourselves and in the industry, the need to converge between an API world, which is more kind of a request and response of services, into something is happening, let me know because I have an interest, or I might be interested because you can infer about that. It is a different type of paradigm, but the two go together, right? So I envision that we are creating solution more and more where something is getting notified. Somehow people that are interested in certain kind of event get also advised or receiving such an event, and then we go back with an API to get more information about what happened. Again, an activity report for suspicious fraud is being raised maybe by a fraud department, but it doesn't tell you all the details you need because you are maybe your operation requires to go back to the customer and get the monthly payment for the mortgage. So you go back to the mortgage items via an API asking what are the conditions and terms. What if the customer defaults at this point in time? If there is any delinquency happening along the journey of being the mortgage being paid. So all these other facts after the event raised goes back to an interrogation of the details. So I see finally that eventing and API will merge into something, who knows what is the name, it doesn't matter, but the point is the same. You get to know something, eventually call up somebody to ask more. Yeah. So I think this is the mega pattern.
I totally agree. And I think that is starting to play out in the industry, and we're starting to see a little bit of it. And certainly Solace is investing a lot in that direction as well. And I think it makes a lot of sense. The industry has been API led for quite some time, but there are limitations to just REST or to just request reply. I mean, that's not going away, right? But if you want to combine the agility and the coupling and the notification powerfulness of event-driven architecture, you certainly don't want to lose the reusability and the normalization that APIs bring. So bringing these two things together makes so much sense in the industry, and we're definitely seeing it. So it's great that you also agree. So just in terms of customers, and I know you don't have to speak about customer names, but customers that are doing innovative things in your mind around event-driven architecture. Can you give us some examples of some things you're seeing more recently that are just super cool and relating to the event-driven world?
So I would say in general, moving from let's say a messaging paradigm where you consume, but you can go back in past because the message has been delivered. Maybe it's a little technical here, but the concept of eventing and streaming goes along very well because if we have this eventing sequence very carefully over time, and then we have ability to go back in the past, like a TiVo, right? The rewind to rebuild history because we want to maybe, run this history through a different type of algorithmic calculation. This is something incredibly important. So having a set of event catalog is great. And then we rewind, and or also for auditing, right? What happens 2 days ago when we made a decision? Well, if you have eventing streamed and stored, you can go back 3 days ago and you go back in time and can re-forward all the eventing by reconstituting the state of the business. This is incredibly important now. So again, it's not just technology, it's also auditing, compliance, that regulatory needs that are simplified by having abstracted out everything into eventing and streaming. This is what I would say. This is the area of payments. Payment, huge modernization and happening, and RedHat is quite active with partners as well, where the use of eventing and streaming comes incredibly a good pattern, good architecture because of the scalability required.
Yeah, I know payments is definitely hot, certainly on corporate transactions, corporate payments is certainly a hot topic. What about open banking? I know that was a subject that you've been talking about for quite some time. I mean, how is open banking and APIs and eventing? Is there anything happening in that part of the business in your mind?
In open banking, which I would maybe amplify into open APIs, because open banking might smell maybe European. So open banking is regulatory driven, but also moreover now is market driven. And the new open banking, which goes into open finance, is way beyond just the PSD2 payment plug into the bank. Is going to be advisory, is going to be in the realm of microloans. So it's expanding the capabilities offered to the customer. And going in that direction by saying that the journey has been very different in different regions. Just because maybe the regulation were pushing, but now the institution and the ecosystem in general sees opportunities. And more than open banking is really the fact that the banking services are getting more diluted between the bank institution and the fintech and the other basically aggregators. So other parties that are maybe now responsible for the distribution of the services rather than being served only by the bank. So it's a very interesting situation of business integration between the different tiers of partners.
Awesome. So then, I guess that one question I would ask is just related to, your journey. You've been doing event-driven architecture for a very long time, Alessandro. You're very experienced in this space. You've been doing capital markets for a very long time. Where I believe, frankly, are the most experienced people when it comes to event streams. I know it goes back a long way, but there's a lot of sophistication built in there. What would be some advice you would give, to other organizations in supply chain, digital factory, even in payments, where there's a lot less experience and maturity in event-driven architecture? What sort of advice would you give to the folks who are just starting out on their EDA journey?
It maybe sounds strange what I'm saying, but before banking, I did a lot of work in commerce and in B2B for logistics. So what I realized, how much work has been done by the operators, right, in the industry to define what is important operationally, business-wise, and then they define, I need this. I was in transportation when the ship docks into the harbor, right? A set of eventing happening, right? The events are important for the next guy to carry over the job because now that the ship is docked at the pier, right, at the dock. The level of modeling requested is across the ecosystem is really a lot of work. And I think it's still happening in banking. In capital market, we kind of did it because we needed to streamline quickly, fix 4.2, messaging and streaming and so forth. In retail banking and wealth, probably there is no standard yet. However, there are major work done at the community level. I'm referring, for example, to BIA, the Banking Industry Association Network, where the topology of capability have been defined, but now we are establishing what are the eventing between the business realm of the bank. They are important to be propagated. And this is something actually that is leading in the working group. I'm very active on this with my team.
Awesome. So my last question for you, Alessandro, is what's next for you in RedHat and financial services? What's the big topics on your mind? What's next?
Specifically to eventing or in general,
General.
Dennis?
General.
In general. Well, again, Red Hat is positioned to be the leader for multi-cloud. So we help customers to bring the workload, whatever they want. And whatever they want is very important, no matter what is cloud A or B or data center, because we will never go be only on the cloud and only on the data center like in the past. We want to be the fabric. And the fabric is not just, an operating system or a Kubernetes platform or OpenShift, but it's also all the set of middleware capability on top where you can build solution at scale on the cloud. That is the journey is happening, and we want to do more and more. So what is next, I think, is going to be the composition also of not only eventing, but also fabric, that intelligence with the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning, where eventing will feed models that eventually retroactively will adjust how the corporation works from the business perspective, or maybe just from a technology perspective initially. So this is something that is happening already, and customers are very interested to explore the combination between processes and now artificial intelligence to find the new insight that our algo and our rule have not been able to do so far.
And that's great. I think that you're right. I think we started with the container, then we started with the cloud. Now we're going multi-cloud. Now people want distributed containers, and now people want to figure out, well, how do I scale my applications? How do they talk to one another? I mean, all these problems are coming together now at scale, and it's great to see Red Hat in the game, and certainly look forward to working closer with you guys in the future, Alessandro. So thanks so much for taking the time. It's been a while since we've actually talked, Alessandro, and I look forward to getting back together in New York once everybody's vaccinated post-COVID. But thanks so much for participating in the EDA Summit here and taking the time with us. It's been awesome, and I hope you stay safe and stay well.
Thank you for having me, and good luck with the conference. Thank you.
Thanks, Alessandro.